In this movie, I'll walk you through the various shortcuts that will be available to you if you install my DKeys custom keyboard shortcuts. And that way you have a sense for what you're getting into. And then in the next movie, I'll show you how to install those shortcuts. I've got a couple of HTML files here. They're both available in the 22 settings folder. One's called DKeys AICS6 Windows.htm, and the other's the same thing, Macintosh.htm. And these tables document every single shortcut that's available to you in Illustrator, whether I created the shortcut or not. So the black shortcuts are the default shortcuts. The red ones are the ones that I've added. For the most part, where the menu commands are concerned, I didn't change a single one of Illustrator shortcuts. I just added my own. Now, on a Mac, things start off with the Illustrator menu. There is no Illustrator menu on the PC. And it contains all the preferences commands, as you can see here, which have these default shortcuts. But the thing I want you to notice is that the hide application command right here, hide Illustrator, which normally in other applications has a keyboard shortcut Command H, that has no shortcut inside Illustrator. Instead, Command H hides the selection edges. But you do have Command Option H in order to hide all the other programs. All right, I'm going to scroll down here to the File menu so that you can see the first of the shortcuts that I've added here. I've given the Place command a shortcut of Command Option D or Control Alt D on the PC. And that's based on a very ancient shortcut that's available inside other applications, which is Command D or Control D. And then for the export command, you have a shortcut of Command Shift Option X or Control Shift Alt X on the PC. The next custom keyboard shortcuts aren't available until we get to the object menu. So notice that each one of the menus appears in gray inside of this list. And then the submenus have little greater than signs after them. And I've given you a bunch of keyboard shortcuts inside of the Path submenu. So for outline stroke, we've got Control /. You can see them all here, but Simplify, a very useful command of Control Shift Alt Z or Command Shift Option Z on the Mac. And then for add anchor points, Control Shift Alt A or Command Shift Option A on the Mac. And then divide objects below, which allows you to take a line and use it to cleave, for example, a circle in half, if you like, is Control Shift Alt / or Command Shift Option / on the Mac. To make a tile pattern, it's Control M or Command M on the Mac. Believe it or not, Control and Command M go unused otherwise inside of Illustrator. And I think that is an extremely useful feature. We've got some additional commands that you can take a look at here if you have a desire to. The Glyphs panel, you can bring it up by pressing Control Shift Alt G or Command Shift Option G on the Mac. I've also given all the change case commands a name. So this is to change the case of some selected type. So you can make it all uppercase or lowercase. This is different than all caps, by the way, in that you are actually changing out the characters for uppercase characters or lowercase or title case or sentence case, which again is something I do a lot. So I went ahead and threw those in here. This is the select menu right there. I'll go ahead and scroll down to it on the Mac side as well. And I really like those select same features, which allow you to select one blue object, for example, and then select all the other blue objects as well. And I've gone ahead and given some of these commands keyboard shortcuts that all involve Control Alt or Command Option on the Mac. And I just took advantage of shortcuts that were available, essentially. So for fill color, if you want to select things with the same fill color, it's Control Alt comma or Command Option comma on the Mac. For stroke color, it's Control Alt or Command Option period. And for stroke weight, it's Control Alt or Command Option /. And then we've got some other ones, just some numbers that happen to be available there. And I figured for direction handles to select all the control handles, that is, inside of an object, all the curving segments, independently of the anchor points, a nice curving numeral would do the trick, such as Control Alt 8 or Command Option 8 on the Mac. Next, we'll move down to the Effect menu, and notice that I've given the Transform command, which is so very useful as a dynamic effect, the keyboard shortcut of Control E. Or in a Mac, we have Command E. Again, that's a keyboard shortcut that otherwise goes unused. And so it's Control E or Command E for effect, essentially. And then the other great effect, which is Drop Shadow, has a keyboard shortcut of Control Alt E or Command Option E on the Mac. For round corners, I've given you Control Shift Alt R or Command Shift Option R on the Mac. All right, I don't want to belabor this too much because you can look through this list on your own, but I am going to go ahead and scroll quite a bit down the list here. You'll see that there's this other category called Other with Menu Commands, and what that's telling you is these are other features that don't have menu commands associated with them, but they're organized along with the menu commands in the keyboard shortcuts dialog box. So most of these are shortcuts that are included along with Illustrator by default, which are pretty interesting because there's an awful lot of stuff you can do from the keyboard. I went ahead and added a shortcut for creating a new swatch, which is Control-Shift-Plus, essentially. It appears as equals, but it's the plus key. Command-Shift-Plus on the Mac. And then if you scroll down to the tools list, you'll see that I've added a bunch of shortcuts. Now, we did modify a few of these shortcuts back in the fundamentals course. You may recall that we went ahead and switched out the blob brush and gave it a keyboard shortcut of B, and then turned around and gave the paintbrush a keyboard shortcut of Shift B. So there's a few of those here. The eraser tool has a keyboard shortcut of E, whereas the free transform tool has a keyboard shortcut of Shift D. And then the ellipse tool has a keyboard shortcut of Shift M, whereas the shape builder tool has a keyboard shortcut of L. So I switched all those around. Otherwise, they're just additional shortcuts, like Shift A for the arc tool. And for the rectangular and polar grid tools, I added shortcuts of Shift Y and Shift C. For the polygon tool, we have a keyboard shortcut of Shift G for gone. And for the star tool, Shift T for the second letter in star, and so forth throughout the list. And then the final shortcuts appear for the various opacity levels. So in Photoshop, for example, you can just tap the 1 key to change the opacity of a layer to 10%. I thought that might be a little bit too dangerous just to give a shortcut of 1 and 2 for 20% and 3 for 30%, because it's very possible you might tap one of those keys and change the opacity of an object and not really be paying attention and, mess up your artwork. So instead, I gave shortcuts of Shift along with a number key. So Shift 1 is 10% all the way up to Shift 0 for 100%. And that, friends, is what you have to look forward to if you install my DKeys custom keyboard shortcuts. In the next movie, I'll show you how to install the shortcuts so that they're available to you in Illustrator CS6.